Also, I don't date women I work with because that could be a major issue that can cause you to go see HR and have all types of headaches.
So for contract, so you're working contract, what's the difference in your opinion, lifestyle wise, for you working remote in contract or just the traditional 9 to 5? How has that affected your quality of life?
Okay, so I haven't had a remote contract job. I would love one. That would be awesome, man. Just be in your place all day. But as far as contracting, I work the night shift. It's been amazing, man. You got to be a little bit business savvy when you talk about how much you want to make, talk about your experience, because you do have certain companies, they're not necessarily bad, but they're trying to kind of like the less you make, they kind of able to get more out of that. If it's like a subcontracting company, they're able to get more from you being there. But so you got to be a little bit business savvy, but most companies I dealt with are pretty good. I like the freedom, man. So for me, I like to be able to work on a contract for like a year, maybe 2 years, and then throw my resume back out there. Right now, with my current mindset, I'm thinking of just staying with government because government has been amazing. The U.S. government ain't going nowhere anytime soon, I don't think. So it's pretty secure. That's been my experience to keep them.
And I wanted to add to that as well. When you talk about, business savvy words, what is your pivot to going into a situation where they don't tell you what the salary or payment is and they are asking you what is your worth?
There's two ways to go about that. So you could look up that position on Indeed, LinkedIn, and then a lot of times they have like the salary, what that position makes, or you could just ask it, okay, how much this position pays, I know a lot of times when I ask that before giving a salary number, they tell me, I'm like, okay. And if it's too low, then I just turn it down.
Okay, I got a question for you. Were references important for you getting on in any of your jobs?
I think so, but I think the only place that called my references that I know of was the hospital gig. And I had a few people that I trusted as good references and they got me in. Oh, also that internship. I just thought about that. I got that through references. So yeah, I think references are pretty good. And that's all a part of networking.
Yeah, which, like I said, for me, goes back to, wow, I feel like they're solid references because of where they are and what they do, but they're not related to tech. So like G said, they're not going to hold it against me necessarily, but they're solid references that's going to speak on what I do and how I get down. So
with your situation being that you don't have a tech background, nobody's expecting you to have tech references.
Yeah.
Now, if they do ask for references, they're probably going to be calling just to ask for somebody to, give them an opinion of your overall character. Are you a trustworthy person? Are you a hard worker? The cheesy stuff like that. Nobody's going to be asking, how are they working when they were working at the help desk? Because you don't have that in your background. So.
Yeah. Fair enough. And so yeah, there I'm good.
And Chris, I think you got a big thing going for you because you say you've been at some of these positions for like, you're not a job hopper, and that's a big thing when it comes to military contracting because you might work a contract here and then you go somewhere else. But the fact that you're consistent with a company, like there's a lot of companies that like that, and then there's a bunch of companies, even though you might be new, they're willing to take what you know and then do some on-the-job training as well. So
yeah. Cool.
I have a question. So when it comes to contract work, how do you go about reading your contract? Is there certain things and phrases that you're looking for to make sure that, you're protected?
To be honest, I just pretty much just read it straight through. I haven't seen any contract I've been given. I haven't seen anything fishy to where my eyes was raised up. I did hear about some things like if the company pays for you to get a certification and you leave the company, then you have to pay that company back the money, things like that. But to me, that's like, okay, whatever. But I haven't heard anything like, how some of these entertainers talk about like 360 deals. I haven't had anything crazy like that. It's just they pretty much tell you what you're expected to do. You can't use certain drugs and alcohols and stuff like that. And then if this is a government place, you gotta dress a certain way. It's stuff like that for the most part. And then I haven't seen anything in my contracts to where I'm hesitant to sign it. But I'm not saying stuff like that doesn't exist. I just haven't had the experience of dealing with anything like that.
Now, question. So you're saying the contracts are fairly straightforward, or are they watered down with legalese, or?
No, the contracts I've been given are pretty straightforward. Like, this is what you're going to make. You're working in a government building. This is how you're expected to act. In certain places, you can't have your phone. They expect you to treat governments like certain documents with like extra care. Like some certain documents, like if you're caught leaving the building with them, like that's something like if you're concerned about that, like if you're not like a mindful person, you have like some security document and you take it out the building just by accident, then that's something you could get in trouble for. But I don't think most people, and especially since we're on our computers, most people won't do anything like that.
I was just going to say, based basically your contract is just going to outline company you're being hired to work for, the salary they're going to pay you, the amount of time you're going to be working there, especially if it's a contract job, 6 months, 12 months, and the duties that you're going to be performing. Now, after you sign the contract and accept employment, then you begin what is called the onboarding process. And then that's when they're going to have you fill out all this other information or attend these classes or whatever, explaining the rules and regulations. That's when the dress code comes in. That's when, if you work in a secret facility that requires a clearance, what you can and can't do, potential legal issues that could arise if you do X, Y, and Z. Because like I said, I used to work for the National Security Agency, right, some years ago. And just like him, I couldn't even bring a cell phone into the building. Right. It was a building with no windows, and I couldn't just randomly take papers out of the building unless the security guard actually checked the papers, because we're dealing with a bunch of classified top secret information. So they want to check everything. That's when you'll find all that stuff. But generally, just with the contracts in general, they're just going to outline, like I say, once again, who you're working for, what position you're being hired to do, how much they're going to pay you, how long you're expected to work that contract, and just the general job description and duties of what you're expected to perform under that contract. That's pretty much how it works for the most part.
Great way of putting it. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question, Chris. You could always renegotiate your contract. If you feel like they're not paying you what you want. I don't know if you got the leg room to do that when you first start, but the more experience you get, you could be like, no, I'm not really feeling this, and then just go. Well, you don't say it like that in the contract, but be more formal. But here,
and there are pros and cons to being a contract employee. I think one of the biggest pros of being a contract employee is that you're not locked into a particular company. You're only there for X amount of time to fulfill the needs of that contract. And then once the contract is up, either you can try to renegotiate and do your contract over and hopefully get more money, or you could just chuck deuces and go to another company and keep it pushing. And guess what? That's not going to ding you on your resume, because on your resume, you're going to state, I was working a 12-month contract. And so guess what? When the contract ends, I got to go somewhere else. That's not the same as you working for a company full time and then you decide to quit and go work for another company. Now people are looking at you like, oh, you're just hopping from company to company. Contract work is looked at different than somebody as a full-time employee of a company and they're trying to hop from job to job.
I got a question. If you don't mind, in your experience, can you tell me what it's like dealing with HR? Both of you, if you don't mind.
Okay, so my experience has been fairly simple. I haven't dealt much with HR, but most of the time when I do deal with HR, it's just like onboarding stuff. That's about it.
Yeah, that's pretty much the same with mine. HR, like I say, even when I was in the military, they were called the S1. They perform the same functions. But basically, they're there to give you all the contracts to sign and make sure that when you sign the contracts, your boss or your employer sends it back to the HR people so they can file it into your account. They also keep tabs of all of any other additional paperwork, healthcare paperwork you might have to sign, insurance paperwork, salary paperwork, all this other stuff outside of the scope of what you do. No shade to anybody that's an HR worker, but they're mainly there to push papers. Now, if you mess around and get in trouble, then you got to go see the HR people. They're also going to be the ones to fire you too and escort you off the property. So, but they're mostly there just to make sure the paperwork is flowing properly with the employees or the contract employees, and just make sure the paperwork is moving fluid, moving as smoothly as possible. That's pretty much their role.
Tech G, I do have a story. It didn't involve me, but somebody else dealing with HR for a negative. So government employee working for the government, military, they try to be equal opportunity, your race, religion, all that. So where I was working, we had a couple guys. We had a new hire, and then they was making fun of this person for one of the protected statuses I just named, like religion, sexuality, all that stuff. So in your personal life, you could have whatever you want, but in your place of work, certain opinions about certain people you should keep to yourself, because if somebody overhears it, that could be your job right there. There was serious talk about letting those guys go for talking about this person.
My rule is I don't talk about politics at work. I don't discuss sexual orientation. I don't discuss race relations at work. Those three things can potentially get you fired damn near immediately. And also, I don't date women I work with, because that could be a major issue that can cause you to go see HR and have all types of headaches.
Yeah, don't do it.
We all laugh and chuckle, but that's a serious issue. Just leave them alone. Don't even be out there giving them the googly eyes. None of that crap. Like me personally, I don't even like talking to women in the same room when it's just she and I. Not because I'm scared I'm going to say something crazy or she's going to try me. I just don't want anything to be perceived wrong. So every time I'm in a room, I got to talk to another woman. I always try to make sure that there's somebody else that can hear the conversation, or, at least be aware of the conversation taking place if they can't be there with me. And this is something that I learned in the Army, because this was a big issue when talking to the lower ranking people. When the NCO went to go talk to a lower ranking soldier, we always had to have at least another NCO in the room room, or had to be at least two of those privates, those lower ranking people in the room at the same time, so that nobody gets accused of doing something crazy. But that's just how I function, because I don't want to get caught up in any of them headaches. So like I say, religion, politics, sexual orientation, dating people at the job, I steer clear of all that stuff. You steer clear of all that crap, go to work, do what you got to do. Your paychecks will keep flowing in.